Hi everyone! So as promised, I said that I would do an eyeshadow palette inventory. I sat down and I sorted all of my eyeshadow palettes, counted them, I wrote them all down, so everything will be in the description box as well. So hopefully that helps you, but it's also to help me because I want to be able to track this and kind of keep a good solid list. I really want to do that for most of my products. It's going to be difficult for some, but definitely when I narrow down categories, I want to have a written lists because that helps me. So anyway, I'm going to go through these in the order that I have written the list out, which is just alphabetically by brand. I'm not ranking the palettes. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about each individual palette because we would be here all night. The last time I did an inventory video, it was an inventory and declutter, and I had to do it in two parts because it took a very long time. So I'm just going to really go through these palettes really quick. These are things that I've decided to keep. You'll probably notice some things missing if you have been around my channel for a little while, because I really did a pretty ruthless declutter, at least for me. I don't really like to declutter, which is why I have some of this stuff. And some of this stuff is old, and there's a couple of things that I'm a little questionable on whether or not I want to keep, but I do want to try using them a little bit more before I just decide to get rid of them. So anyway, I think I might have said this already, but in case I didn't, if you want to hear more about any specific palette, if you want a review, if you would like a tutorial or get ready with me or see it appear in Project Pan Porn or something like that, please leave a comment for me down below. All right, with that said, we're gonna start with Anastasia Beverly Hills, and I have two eyeshadow palettes. I have the classic Modern Renaissance, and mine is pretty beat up. Not gonna do close-up shots of these palettes. I feel like you've probably seen most of them and you get the gist here. You can really see my pan porn. This has appeared in Project Pan Porn already and a few other videos, as well as a lot of other people's videos and channels. This is a very popular eyeshadow palette. Subculture. So I only have two Anastasia palettes, and this is my other one, which also has a lot of good usage on it. I have the ColourPop Yes Please palette. Mine was depotted though, so it's in a little mini Z palette, but this is the entire palette, basically laid out entirely the same. I know I'm sort of an anomaly right now because I'm one of the few people who really does not have a lot of ColourPop stuff. Next, I have three palettes from Huda Beauty. Two are little minis. So I have the Emerald Obsessions palette, and I really hate this palette. It's beautiful. It looks gorgeous. It swatches beautifully, and it applies really well, and it looks good for about an hour. And then all of the shimmer, all the glitter rains down my face. I can't keep it on. I've tried different ways to get the glitters to stay on my eyes, and it just doesn't work for me, which is just a shame because it really is so beautiful. And I can't make myself get rid of it because I'm like, well, I can use it for filming, maybe. Sometimes if I try and film too many things in one night and I use this palette, it's a mess. It just ends up not happening. But anyway, this palette was really disappointing. Okay, I wasn't gonna do reviews. I gotta stop. If you guys want to hear more, let me know. I'm trying to do this really quickly because I do have a lot of things to get through. I also have the Warm Brown Obsessions palette. So this is a beautiful warm toned palette. I have a lot of warm tones. Don't have issues with this palette, by the way, compared to the Emerald one. And the full-size Huda palette I have is Desert Dusk. And this has really declined in quality, but I can't let go either. I did not include custom palettes, single shadows, even things that were sort of sold together if it was not a pre-assembled palette sort of structure. This is probably the one exception. This is a collab that was between Inglot and Crystal Clear Makeup. So it was like the Beauty Chameleon palette, which was the Inglot palette, and then the shadows that she had selected. And they're pretty decent shadows. I can't bear to let this go because it was really, really expensive, but that collab was awful. Really kind of terrible, but the palette itself is nice. I only have one Juvia's Place palette, and this is the Zulu palette. Very colorful. I do still have a Kat Von D palette. This is Pastel Goth. This is one of the ones I'm on the fence about keeping. I can't bring myself to declutter it just yet. I've been using some of my Kat Von D stuff that I've had for a while because I was a really massive Kat Von D supporter and bought a lot of Kat Von D products. So I do still have a lot of things hanging on here, and I just can't decide what to do with this. So I'm gonna maybe play with it a little bit and see if it's it's worth keeping, and if not, get rid of it, and if it is, then I will hang on to it because I bought it a while ago. It was a limited edition product a long time ago, so anyway, it does still exist in my collection for the time being. Just have to put disclaimers out there because if I didn't, then somebody would be jumping on me for it. I have a little Mercier palette. This is the Editorial Eye Palette Intense Clays, and I have gone to declutter this so many times because it's kind of boring. And every time I go to declutter it, I swatch it, and I'm like, wow, I have to use this. This is beautiful, and then I never use it. So this is another one of those things where I'm like, I have to use this. This has got to go in like a use it or lose it kind of project because it has sat pretty much untouched, except for those occasional swatches, for way too long. I have one Lime Crime palette, the iconic Venus palette. So, a very warm palette as well. Lunar Beauty Life's a Drag palette. This is a beautiful mix of neutrals and colors. I have two pre-assembled MAC palettes that I will refuse to let go of, the x15 Cool Neutrals and the Warm Neutrals palette. I have a palette from Makeup Forever, which is the Lustrous Shadow palette, which is very beautiful, not very well loved. I have one Marc Jacobs palette. This is Scandalust, and there's a lot of similar tones within my collection, I have noticed. I do have a couple of Morphe palettes. I have the Happy Hour palette. So this is a 15 pan palette. Oh wow, such similar shades. It gets worse. It gets worse because I also have, which one is this one? This is the 3502 palette. So take that sheet out. So yeah. And, of course, the 350. Ow, I just crushed my finger a little bit. I know some of you are thinking I deserve that for showing this palette, but whatever. It's a beautiful fall palette, and it is pretty to look at. Now for my favorite category, Natasha Denona. So I have the Holiday Aeris palette, and I have the Mini Gold palette. So this year I bought this, the Mini Gold, and I bought the Metropolis palette, which I'll show you in a second. So I have the Mini Gold palette. So I also have the Gold palette. This is very messy, as my Natasha palettes tend to be. We have Lila. Lila looks like this. The newest one, which is the Metropolis palette. The Sunset palette, which is currently my Project Pancorn choice. So this is my everyday palette these days. And finally, I have the Tropic palette. So that one looks like this. Of every brand, I have the most Natasha Denona, so take that for what you will. I have one Pat McGrath palette. This is the Mothership Subversive La Vienne Rose palette, and this is so stunning. I have two Pixi palettes, Pixi Beauty. So I have Natural Beauty, and this, I did not pan this shadow. I dropped the palette and it fell out, completely shattered. So this is just a mostly neutral browns. And then the Reflex Light, the Reflex Light palette is all shimmers. I have a eyeshadow palette from a brand called Marcel Luxurious Eyeshadow palette. This had been sent to me last year, and it arrived just when I had pink eye, and then I was moving, and then it was crazy, and I didn't end up touching this for a very long time, and I barely used it. It's a very subtle eyeshadow palette, but I wanted to play around with it a little bit before I decided what I was going to do with it. And I have a palette from Sigma, the Warm Neutrals Volume 2 palette. We are actually nearing the end. I have 4 palettes from Too Faced. So I have the Chocolate Gold palette, which looks like this. So there's a big, huge chunk missing out of Chocolate Gold because I had used it for Franken Shadow before. So that's why it looks like this. I have the Just Peachy Matte palette, which has been one of the palettes I have used the most over the year, and I couldn't believe, like, looking at it, like, it looks untouched, but it was like this palette and the one I'll show next, the few Natasha palettes, one from Urban Decay. Like, I used a very small handful of palettes, but I guess I used it very sparingly. My makeup style has changed quite a bit over the last year. Definitely, I've noticed a lot of difference just in personal taste and the way I've been choosing to apply makeup. Like, kind of coincides with my no-buy a little bit, but maybe that's just coincidence. Sweet Peach palette. So this is also one that I reach for a lot. This is one that had been passed on to me from my sister, so that's why Talk Derby to Me and Tempting are completely missing. I decluttered my own Sweet Peach palette when I had pink eye because I had used that in the Naked 3 palette, so I didn't want to risk infecting my eye again, because I'd said this before and some people were jumping to the conclusion that I was blaming the palettes, and no, I'm not blaming the eyeshadow palettes for pink eye. I'm saying that I happened to use them the same time that I had pink eye, so I'm not blaming the palettes, but because I had used them, I didn't want to take the risk and potentially give myself pink eye all over again. And then I have the Little Puppy palette from Too Faced, and I don't know the actual name of it, it's not on here. It's really pretty. Again, very similar colors. Like, this looks like the Marc Jacob palette and like the Sigma one and a bunch of other ones. But it's cute. It's so cute. So I already mentioned this one, the Urban Decay Naked Heat palette. I don't have a lot of Urban Decay anymore. This is one of my favorites, and this is definitely one of those, like, if I had to rank my eyeshadow palettes, this would be probably in the top 5. Really love this one. But I should have probably just ranked my palettes and done the inventory that way. Let me know if you'd be interested in some sort of ranking, because I can try and make that happen. I have Naked Basics and Naked Basics 2. This Naked Basics is a repurchase because I completely panned this one and then decided to buy it all over again. Still love it. Probably my favorite little set of neutral shadows. And the Naked Basics 2, which I should probably use more of. I just find it's a little powdery, or at least it was. I honestly have not used it in I don't know how long. And sometimes I find certain eyeshadows perform better when they're older, which is weird, because sometimes the eyeshadow quality really declines, which I'll mention in a second, but sometimes it actually gets better and sometimes it's more workable. Like, I actually found that to be true with ColourPop Single Shadows, which I really disliked a lot when I bought them. They were very powdery, I had so much fallout, and then when I let them sit for a while and then went back, they were tougher and easier to use, and I just had such a better experience with it. So maybe that'll be the same with this guy. And the Naked Ultimate Basics. I need to use this more. This is probably something I could get more use out of. I really don't know why I didn't end up using this. I really don't, considering how much I've loved the Naked Basics. I'm surprised Ultimate Basics didn't get much use before I discovered Natasha Denona. Maybe that's the reason. And the last Urban Decay palette I have, I know, shocking. This is, what, 5 Urban Decay eyeshadow palettes, compared to all the ones I used to have before. This is the Heavy Metals palette, and this is one that I'm also on the fence about keeping. This is difficult to show because there's a huge mirror right in the middle, so I'm sure you've already seen my ring light reflections, but it's all metallic finishes. Just hide my entire face there. One side is more colorful shades, the other side are neutrals. And the quality seems to have really declined in this, and a lot of fallout. It's patchy. It's just not like it was when I first got it. So on the fence about keeping this one because I just don't enjoy it that much, but I just can't seem to let it go. The Viseart Editorial Brights palette. This is a staple for me. Also one of my favorite palettes, and when it comes to color, this is really one of the first things I grab. This or the Colored Rain Vivid Pigment singles. But this is definitely a go-to for me. I haven't really been curious to try other Viseart palettes, to be honest. I don't know if I would like other colors. Like the brights is perfect. And lastly, this is a pretty weird note to end on because it's a little tiny trio from Wet n Wild. This is I'm Getting Sunburned, and I decided to include this because it's not a single, and I don't have any other like duos or trios. Like I've decluttered so much stuff, so it's not an eyeshadow palette, I guess technically, but it has 3 shades, so we're gonna call it that. I don't know where else to categorize it. So this is another thing that I keep thinking about getting rid of, and then I swatch the like eyebrow and eyelid colors, and then I'm like, nope, I have to keep it. I just have to. So that is where I stand with all of my eyeshadow. I'm in a better place than I was. I'm sure a lot of people are still thinking it's pretty overwhelming, but I have 42 eyeshadow palettes ranging from fairly large. I think the Metropolis palette has the most amount of shadows, maybe the Morphe. The Morphe is definitely like the largest to hold, the 35O and the 3502, and then like the little Wet n Wild, but you can see like I have other like 6-pan eyeshadow palettes like the Naked Basics kind of style. So it does vary from the large palettes to the extra small palettes. I can see myself decluttering a handful of things. Like I said, maybe the Kat Von D, maybe the Heavy Metals palette, you know, maybe like the Sam Marcel palette and 1 or 2 others. But in general, I don't see myself decluttering a whole bunch right now, but there's some palettes that I haven't touched in a while as well. So I do need to use things, and I'm sure I will make harder decisions. I'm sure things are going to continue to decline in quality in some cases. Some things I really haven't noticed a difference in. Some people will say that they've noticed difference in like their Natasha shadows, and I honestly haven't. Like the Tropic palette is my oldest one and it still performs the same. Or actually the Holiday palette, the Aeris one, might be my oldest one, and it still performs the same for me. Even things like the Lime Crime Venus palette still performs the same. I haven't played with my Anastasia one, so I can't speak about Modern Renaissance or Subculture. Those are ones that I need to get my little paws back into again. But anyway, that is, as promised, my eyeshadow palette inventory. It's a little bit interesting and very surprising, and I definitely thought I had more Urban Decay because Urban Decay was my go-to for so long, but now it clearly is Natasha Denona. I could have spent the same amount of money that I spent on like the Metropolis palette and bought like a crap ton of ColourPop, but it's quality over quantity, and I know somebody's gonna jump on me for saying that, but for me, I'd rather have like one solid palette that I'm constantly reaching for, that I find consistently good, that there's no shadows that are duds, that I just love using, and that I love everything about it. And I want to have a bunch of makeup that I love using, stuff that I like looking at, stuff that I love touching, stuff that works really well for me, just having the aesthetic align with what I want, and that's definitely Natasha Denona for me. This isn't a Natasha Denona ad, I just really like the brand and the shadows. I'm sorry. Okay, anyway, that is everything. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns, whatever. I'm happy to answer you the best that I possibly can. Let me know if you would like to see other inventories. They will probably be coming somewhat in the future once I work through more of my products, because I am working through decluttering some stuff via my Mega Basket Roulette. Okay, I think that's good. I think that about covers it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I hope we get a chance to chat soon. Bye for now.